Hey guys, Mike with Nerd Problems Gaming here, the channel where we go through the good and bad of everything nerdy to make sure you spend your time on the best of the best. In today's video, I'll be doing a review of the game CrossCode, so let's get into it. So this game is an action RPG and it takes place in an MMORPG, and you are a player in that game. And so you're playing as Leah, who is actually in the game because she has lost all of her memories. And your goal is to discover what caused her to lose her memories. And by being in the game, she is more likely to recall those memories because that is where she lost them. At least that's the hope. And so you play through this storyline of trying to regain her memories. And it's pretty cool because, again, you're playing in an MMORPG, so it's kind of like, you know, a Sword Art Online or Dot Hack. That was an old series back in the PlayStation 2 era. And so you're playing as the hero playing in a game. So it's pretty cool because you're interacting with other players, but then they're not just like NPCs, right? They're other players in the game that have their own outside real world lives. And it's a pretty cool concept, and it's a lot of fun to play. And it also touches on a lot of different pretty deep concepts. So the idea of artificial intelligence and, you know, how that develops and the relationships that are created. You know, do they count as real people if someone were to create an artificial intelligence? And what are the ramifications of using those and various things like that. So the storyline is very compelling and it's really fun to play. And so when you jump into the gameplay, it's pretty cool as well. So like I had mentioned, it's a fast-paced action RPG. And then it also has a very heavy puzzle element to it as well. So I look at it kind of almost like a Zelda game in the sense where it's that top-down action RPG view. But then also the puzzle strategies are quite different because one of the abilities that you have is basically a ball that shoots energy out, and it ricochets across the screen. And so it really creates some unique puzzles that you can run into throughout the game. Not only that, as you progress throughout the game, you can gain different elements that this projectile has properties for. So again, you might have like a fire element or an ice element or electricity or a wave element. And what happens is they each kind of have their own unique properties. And so you also have to play off that within the environment as well as you're going through and solving these puzzles. And what's cool with the game too is, again, since you're kind of playing a game within the game, you've got the game itself that you're playing, that storyline, but then there's also the storyline within the game as well. And you're basically on this new planet that humans have discovered, and there's an ancient civilization track technology that's kind of underneath the planet or hidden throughout the planet. You're kind of trying to go through and discover these different ancient ruins and how all that functions within the planet as well. So there's like another side story within the story as well, which is pretty fun. Now what's cool too is the level up mechanic. And so you have your typical kill monsters, gain experience, and that's all well and good. But when you actually level up, it really reminded me a lot of Final Fantasy X with the sphere grid. So you have this grid that you can go through and level up different abilities, different stat boosts, different special moves and power-ups that you get. But then there's also kind of like splitting tracks as you progress and level this up as well. And so what happens is you can kind of customize your character to your play style and how you like to go through those battles. You're going to be more ranged or more aggressive melee type. You can change your play style based on how you level up the character. And what's cool is some of the paths, again, you might change it to go through one ability path, but then you can actually switch back on that path. So you could switch the different moves depending on the scenario, or maybe a boss fight or a puzzle that you can't get past, you might switch to the other one. So again, creates a pretty unique dynamic with that. On top of that, each element has their own individual sphere grid as well. So you kind of level up each one individually. And then as you change through these different elements, your stats will change accordingly based on how you level them up. So it's pretty fun to be able to do that. And I really like that aspect. You know, it's in a bunch of games now, but you know, Final Fantasy X was the first one I played it in, but then it was in 12, is in the new Dragon Quest 11 game. So they've added it to games in more recent history, but I really like that level up mechanic. So it was fun to see that in this game as well. Another neat thing too is that as you level up, it kind of tapers down the experience from monsters. So instead of having, you know, level progression where it takes more and more experience every time, every single level is 1,000 experience points. And so as you start off, you might get a good amount of experience from enemies, but then it slowly trickles down to eventually where you're getting 1 experience from specific enemies if you're in an area that's kind of an earlier area where the monsters are weaker than you. And so this is good and bad because there's some points in the game where you get to where they can get pretty challenging and you might want to go back and level up your character. But if you're going back to earlier areas, you're getting virtually no experience, so it kind of takes forever. So the main way you can level up outside of that is by completing quests within the game. And so again, like your traditional RPG, right? There's all kinds of different quests you can go through and different tasks that you need to do. And so you can gain experience points based on those quests as well. And even those quests actually scale with your levels. So you might get less experience if you are, you know, higher level going through older quests as you play. Also, when you are getting new equipment, it's pretty cool because there's a crafting system with it where basically everything that you buy, you actually need items to be able to purchase those things. So you need items that you find throughout the environment. You can take them into the stores and trade for other goods in addition to spending money to be able to get them. And so this is a cool feature as well to be able to do. And then some things as well, like when you buy weapons, they have not only bonuses, but also hindrances as well. So one might be more suited to your ranged attacks versus your melee attacks. And so you have to decide which one do you like to play as you're playing through the character. So there's a lot of depth in the item gathering and the crafting as well as you play this game, which is really fun too. So one of the big aspects of this game is the dungeons themselves. And so this is a huge part where it can take hours sometimes to get through these dungeons. And so, you know, typically if you're used to maybe like a Zelda type game where you go through a couple rooms, maybe there's some small puzzles, you find the item you need to be able to get further on in the dungeon, and then you just kind of progress through it, and then you maybe have a semi-challenging boss fight. Well, it's a lot different in this game where the puzzles are extremely complex and it can take you, you know, maybe 15, 20 minutes, if not even longer, to get through a single room. And it's not like other games where you're going through dungeons where there's maybe a few rooms that are pretty easy or you just fight a monster and you go through. This one, it's like every single room has a pretty intense puzzle or a pretty challenging monster fight or series of fights that you need to go through to be able to progress on with the dungeon. So it's definitely good and bad, right? It can get frustrating at times as you're trying to go through the dungeon, especially playing on a console version. I know there are points where I'd gotten stuck and looked up, you know, how to get past things. And often I would find people are playing on like the PC version. And so how the aiming mechanic works with your energy ball is that you have to like hold the joystick for so long and it kind of homes in and then shoots where you want it to shoot. Well, I could see how that would work quite well with a mouse and just being able to point at the screen and that's where you want it to go. But when you're on a controller, it's, you know, that 360 degrees moving your thumb around to have to hit that exact spot. So a lot of times, again, you might see the solution to the puzzle, but then it takes you another 15, 20 tries to actually be able to get through it. So this part can definitely get frustrating as you're going through these longer dungeons where, again, some of them can take a couple hours to be able to get through. But at the end of the dungeons, you always have these huge boss fights, which are really fun and challenging, where you basically need to put together all the abilities and skills that you've learned throughout the dungeon. And usually there's a puzzle element involved as well with fighting the boss fights too. So they're definitely very challenging but rewarding as well as you play through and fight these bosses. And if you don't have the right equipment or you're not properly leveled up, these can be nearly impossible to be able to beat. But again, the challenge is very high on this game, but it's fun as well. Again, after that though, it's very rewarding when you're able to beat and complete a dungeon. But going into it, understand it's not going to be a very quick, short dungeon or little bursts of that like many games that are similar to this dungeon crawling style game, like in the Zelda franchise. Another thing that I like too is that you can definitely tell that the game is made by gamers, because there's a lot of inside jokes. There are a lot of things that basically nod to other games. So for example, there's like hedgehog enemies that you fight, and then there's a blue Sonic-like one that you fight throughout the game. You know, you go through towns, and in one of the inns, it's like a Poke Center from Pokemon. And so there's a lot of inside gamer type things with this game as well. So that's a lot of fun to be able to go through and see those kind of inside things, where if you've played these different games, you're going to pick up on that. So that's cool as well. But overall, this game is a ton of fun. The story is really compelling. It's challenging. You're definitely going to get your money's worth. The game itself took me about 60 hours to complete, going through the puzzles. And so again, depending on how fast you get through those, it could be anywhere from like 30 to even 80 hours. And I know I didn't dive into all the extras that the game has as well. There's like a battle arena, multiple things like that, completing all the quests, getting the best gear. I know I didn't do all of that for sure. So there's a lot more to this game as well. So as an indie game and a smaller budget title, this is definitely worth picking up. I highly recommend it. But let me know in the comments below. Have you played this game? Do you like it? Have you played other puzzle games, adventure games like this as well that you enjoy? Let me know in the comments below. But again, guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe and turn on the bell notifications to get the latest updates of new nerd videos we put out here. And if you'd like to help us support the channel, help us pick out content and more, consider becoming a patron of ours over at nerdproblemsgaming.com/Patreon. And if you'd like to plug into our live streams and Let's Plays we do on the channel as well, you can follow us over on Twitch at nerdproblemsgaming.com/Twitch. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you more soon.